towards the bottom of Beis Lamed Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom, and the line begins with the word Be'ez Adover. Okay. Just trying to check.
Hold on a second. No. We'll get it for you. Oh, thank you.
Okay. So this morning you went into a kind of a new phase, a new level. This, talking about Torah. Up until now, we spoke of Torah as a memutza, as the intermediary between Oyer and Soif and world, which is like Chokhmah, the intermediary in Nefesh Odom, in human soul. Chokhmah is what brings the life element of the soul into all human activities. And then we point out that when David HaMelech, the mother says, when David HaMelech rejoiced in Torah, on reflecting how Torah is this memutza, this conduit of godly life into the world, and so then he was actually reprimanded and punished for this, because he had actually failed to focus on the essential element of Torah. Where Torah is really much superior to this whole phenomenon of being a mamutza, of being an intermediary, of being something that can have an effect in the world. And briefly describing this, the Rebbe says that even though Chokhmah has the element of Oyneg, and Oyneg, this is the essence of life, or the essence of Alakus, there are different levels in that itself. There's the Oyneg that can be imbued and contained in Chokhmah, and then there's the Oyneg that cannot even be imbued, not even in Chokhmah. Even though, as we explained all along, that Chokhmah is Bitul Chokhmah is that which takes the Elokus in its true form, in its true level. Nevertheless, there is that level that does not at all express itself, which is called Etzem Ha'inag. And the way the Rebbe briefly presented it, I want to review this as just a little bit of a structure, so we have a reference point. Just like in Torah, there are 4 distinct levels. The way Torah is given to us, there are 4 distinct means by which Torah is expressed, is given, is taught. The lowest one is the oisis, the letters of the Torah, that the letters in conjugation, in conjunction with other letters, actually form words from which we get a message. These are the letters which are written in the Torah. Then there are what's called tagin. These are the little vovim, the little crowns that are placed, that are written on top of each letter, on top of these letters. These crowns are not legible. In other words, we do not pronounce these crowns. But nevertheless, they are there, they're visible, and as such, they represent messages that are known only on the Kabbalah level. They cannot be pronounced, but they are nevertheless obvious, and they are written in the Torah in the scroll itself. Then there is a third level that's called Mekudis.
How do you call it? The crowns?
Tagin.
Tagin?
Tagin. Then there's a third level that's called Mekudis. Mekudis are the vowels. You know that in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Torah, we don't write vowels. These are not written at all. This is something which is known only the Kabbalah know how to read it. And these vowels, this is the that permits the flow and the connection of the various letters from the perspective of the letters and the tagim and the vowels. There is not in the Torah an indicator where a sentence starts and begins and ends, to the extent that there was a great scholar like Achover Goel. He said that the entire Torah is one long word. From the beginning to end, it's one long word. And therefore, just like in a word, if you transposition one letter, you change the entire meaning of the word. So too in the Torah. If you transposition, if you take one letter out and put it elsewhere, this is not the same Torah at all. This is the cloud that we have, the rule and the Torah. Things have to be precisely written to just the way we have it. And any change, a letter missing, a letter extra, in the Sefer Torah, the whole Sefer Torah is possible. It's invalid. And then on top of these three levels, there's what's called tamim. Tamim are pronounced, but in a different form. Tamim are the sing-song with which you read the Torah. This tamim, this sing-song, represents not the words, not the letters, not the words. It represents, it's actually related to the message itself, the total message. And this is the highest level of how the Torah is presented to us. So obviously, these are four levels going from lower upwards. The highest level, the tamim. Tamim, this is what's called tam. Tam means a taste. This is actually related to the oineg element. This oineg element that we have now described, this is the oineg element that is represented and contained in the written words of the Torah. Even though it's not written there, but it's contained in the written words. So this is an oineg that in effect can be expressed and it can be contained in words. Not written into words, but it associates with words. It is not an oineg at the soul level, it's an oineg at an intellectual level, and even below that. Yes, sir.
You're aware that there is tamim for the Sephardic Jews and tamim for the Ashkenazi. The Hasidic pronunciation is very different.
You don't mean tamim, I mean the Mekudis. The way the vowels are pronounced.
No, the way the whole text is being pronounced, the song of the words.
Which song?
Yeah.
Like what?
The
Like you
way.
said Baruch or Baruch?
No. The intonation.
The intonation. Now the intonation is like this. The intonation is exactly the same. It's exactly identical. Except they sing it differently. Just like the Mekudis are the same. We have Komatz, Patach.
Yeah, that I.
No, but you pronounce it differently.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's essentially it's the same, but it renders differently on the way we render it, the way we understand it. But the message is exactly the same. It's exactly the same time. As a matter of fact, this timing are part of halacha sometimes, of how you're supposed to break the words and so forth. They're identical. They pronounce it differently. It's just like you say Baruch and say Baruch. It's the same word. Doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
So you don't, okay, we both say ma pa pashtos, okay, if katan. No, you don't do that?
They
You
do
say
it
differently?
Okay. As a matter of fact, okay, maybe it's this is the answer to your question. Okay. Then the Rebbe says, this is all. This is the okay. Tam. This is the point that we wanted to bring out. Tam. The word tam in Lashon Kodesh actually means taste. And what is taste? We discussed this morning. Taste, it does not add anything of substance to the food, and yet it has a very profound effect. It presents the food at a different level, at a much more human level. And to the extent that something that has a foul taste, even may be perfectly healthy, a human being cannot eat it. Because a human being, when anything he takes in, he immediately applies his intellectual relations. And if he can't relate to it intellectually, he can't eat. But this taste element, this is what gives an overall sense and meaning to the words that we read, and in general to all the halachas and all the meaning. This is called tam. To the extent that the word tam is actually translated on a simple level, we use the word tam to say the reason for it. Reason, as explained this morning, is a very worldly, superficial, worldly form of explaining, of giving a basis for something. But in truth, this tam is not just a basis for something. Tam actually gives a life element into this halacha, and that's the word reason is a very poor translation of the word tam. Then the Rebbe points out that despite that the high level of this tam, you can leave some of the napkins for usage. There is the real tam, that the Torah has the yin hatam and the oiming, that actually originates from a level way superior to the tam as we recognize it here in our world. Even the tam, even the taste of Torah, so to speak. The original, the ultimate taste of Torah, oinig of Torah, is that which is united. It has an essence, in a godly essence, in the Ein Sof. That element which cannot and does not express itself in anything. And therefore, David was reprimanded for referring to Torah as having oinig, as bringing oinig and life into the world. The real element of Torah is the oinig that does not express itself and does not have any direct effect on the world. This is what the Rebbe explained till now, very briefly. Now, this is going to be elaborated upon. All right. Baruch, you are online. Yehuda, you are online.
Excuse me. The Tamim represent the same level David was talking about, or they represent a higher level?
David was referring to the timing on the lower level, but really there's a timing on the much higher level.
Uh-huh.
Behoinyan hu. To understand this principle that we have now presented, we're saying that at first we actually pointed out that Chochma and Tainug, that Torah is Chochma. And now we're saying that Torah is actually in Tainug or Atzmi, that does not even imbue itself, it's not mislabish, does not even imbue itself, cannot be imbued even in Talumis Chochma. V'hinei ba'emes, to understand this and to elaborate on this, ba'emes in truth, Tainug v'chochmo, hein inyan echo. Tainug and chochmo are one and the same inyan. They are intricately interrelated. One is based, not only based, but is representative of the other. And as is explained, the proof, the demonstration for this principle that Tainug and Chochma are inyan echad. The demonstration for that is mima, from the fact shehachochma mechayev kefi Tainug hanefesh dafka, that the chochma brings out and demands and expresses itself, makes you see things kefi Tainug hanefesh dafka, exclusively according in the way, in conformity with the Tainug of the nefesh. This is how the Chochma projects itself. As is obvious, he says bechush, we can actually sense this principle. The principle that we sense is that a person is misamek bedover. He delights in something b'tainug atzmi shebenafshoi davko. If he should be delight, if the sense of delight is a true delight, an essential soul type of delight, a delight that he relates to it totally, without any extraneous explanations and extraneous benefits, so to speak, or experiences, just that it grasps and represents his entire soul. Davko, that occurs only kasher hadover nase api gzeiras chochmosei, mishakoseh b'mokimach. Only when hadover, the thing, is made, whichever thing it is that a person can have delight from, if that thing is made api gzeiras chochmosei, exclusively and perfectly according to the gzeira, according to the decree of his chokhmah, of his wisdom, how his seichel, his chokhmah demands that it be. This is when he would be misaneg in this image. So what this is referring to is that even in such things that it can easily correlate the person to the value and the significance of things. Let's say a home, a house. A home is something which we discuss all the time. That touches a person. It's a human element. It's part and parcel of what a human being is. I mention the Gemara all the time. Odom shin lebayis in yod. And therefore, having a home is something that touches his very soul. And the person is actually experiencing his home. The delight that he has in it is his personal, what we call the soul delight. However, there is a caveat, there is a qualifier there. That level of delight, even in such a thing as a home, which is, as we said, an essential element in the person, that total soul delight will be experienced only if the home is made according to how his chokhmah had perceived it. How he perceives the homes to be. So, this principle that a person perceives a certain desire of a home, to us would seem to be something which is external and has a practical basis. So we have to understand that even though this is on the practical level, building home in a certain way, the real designer of this home is not the response to practical requirement. The real designer of this home is his chokhmah and his perception of what a home should be. Thank you. This is what's called Gzeras Chokhmos. This design is when a person decides, okay, I'm going to have 4 walls, a floor, and a roof. It would seem to us that the reason he says the home has to have 4 walls and a roof and a floor is due to its practical use. What is a home for? To protect it against the elements. When it rains, it shouldn't rain in, and when it's cold, you should be able to be warm and so forth. So for this, we pointed out many times. Check the bottom. It's not that it's not the feet, that the shoes are whole. Yeah. Okay. That really, yes, there is that element that goes all the way down to the practical requirement. Perhaps this would be a good moment, a good opportunity to correlate the whole thing. Before we go to correlating, I just want to make the point.
You can't hear anybody right on the conference. People were talking, you're trying to speak and you can't.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
We can hear, but we can't be heard.
Okay, but mute means I'm muted, right?
Right.
Or something is not right on the conference. You have to ask Golan to intervene there.
I think it's the second week this happened. But during the week it maybe it's okay.
No, but Baruch spoke to me before.
From this tonight?
When I first dialed in.
Spoke
Baruch.
again, he was trying to speak again.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Okay, anyone who wants to say something, please dial my cell number. And you will be able to be heard. 347-583-7833. So, and we always say, the home is, the Gemara says, Mi she'en Beis she'en yod. Home is in a sense is something which is part of the definition of what a human being is. Coming down to our practical life in the world, we say it's nothing to do with that element of what a human being has to do with comfort. It has to do with comfort, with necessity, with practical necessity. So we'll address that in a moment. First, I just want to present the way Chassidus presents it. Chassidus says, no, that is not the essence of a home. This is not how a person relates to a home. This is not his initial concept and perception of a home. Yes, indeed, if God forbid he doesn't have a home, he doesn't have a roof over his head, he will be miserable and he'll look for a roof over his head. However, the roof over his head, a motel, will also satisfy that need. Doesn't have to have his personal home. As a matter of fact, he can that principle can be satisfied in a hotel. That principle is satisfied in somebody else's house, in somebody else's basement, as a guest. In other words, if it were just stripped down to the comfort necessity, the home is not an absolute necessity. And it cannot be said, you cannot be a human being if you don't have a home. When we say you cannot be a human being and lacking in the essence of what a human being is, it's clearly speaking about something much deeper and much more sensitive. Yet still, even when we speak about the home on this essential level, that home, and if we talk about an essential level, we're speaking about a demand for a home coming from his soul, so to speak, coming from the essential oyneg hanefesh. And yet, he presents a design. He says, yes, it has to have 4 walls, it has to have a roof, it has to have a floor. So, where is this correlationship? Why when it comes to design, there's so much practicality involved? Which seem to be confusing, kind of canceling, precluding the essential element of the nefesh. So this is what we have been discussing all along over here. That Chokhmah is this intermediary that correlates the nefesh to all the koiches. And therefore, if the nefesh is mislabish in the guf, and it is in this world, and therefore it functions to all the koiches, Chokhmah translates the nefesh, how the nefesh would relate to all the koiches. In the koiches, in the functioning koiches, you have to have a roof, and you have to have a floor, and you have to have 4 walls. And Chokhmah senses, knows this union from the way it is in the nefesh. And therefore Chokhmah comes up with a design. How do I design this home that it should do 2 things? It should be a design that not mine, it's yours.
Yes, Shlomo, you had a question? You cannot hear, or you cannot speak? You cannot hear. Okay, 1 second. I'll call in with this phone.
Yes, Baruch. What's Baruch?
1 second.
Yeah, we lost you on the conference line. You
I'll call
back
in.
in.
Okay, I'll dial back in right now.
But maybe that piece of hardware is the problem.
Which hardware?
Maybe
This
the
could be.
connection is
All right, I'll
They
dial
cannot.
in. They were able to hear before. I'll dial in again.
Well, we could hear borrow from the beginning.
Oh, wait a second.
I think it's the connection because
Oh, this connection is
it's wonky. So it may not be the connection.
yeah,
The
cool,
conference
that's why.
itself.
Okay. All right, fine. This,
If you'd like to make a call.
So you call in to the conference. Other people can call in. Make no sense.
Welcome to the conference ID you have entered is not valid. Please re-enter your conference ID followed by the pound key. Welcome to the... At the tone, please record. Thank you. You are now entering the... You are participant number 6.
all right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, here we have, so to speak, a demonstration. There's much more to speak about it, but just a very, very simple demonstration of the principle of Chokhmah. That Chokhmah relates to the essential element of the nefesh, and we say that's what Chokhmah is, to the essential Oyneg HaNefesh, but then it also relates to this Oyneg at the functional level, and therefore it presents a home with a design. And the design is something that is suitable to the functions of the home, not just to have a home, to have a place in the world.
The design is suitable for the function and to the oneg.
One second, I'll come to that. The design is suitable to the function. This is that it brings the oneg down to the functional level. But then, here is the big sensitive point. It is neither the pure oneg nor is it the pure function. If you have a design of a home that provides for all the functional needs, but it is not the way his Chokhmah perceives the home, it will not give him that satisfaction of a home. It will give him the functional service, but not the experience of a home. We demonstrated this in a very simple way. We said if a person needs a home, and a home is to provide a real home that enriches, so to speak, a person's mentality, broadens out his perspectives and his spirit. So he has to have a home that has room, that he can have several rooms, whatever he can say. And then it is something which accommodates the human element not that the practical, but the human element. So then say, you give a person, say, your personal home is the Empire State Building. So we said many times, everybody realizes that a person in the Empire State Building will not feel at home. He will have more than the necessity of functional elements. But he will be lacking a sense of a home. Of that element in his nefesh that he wants a home will not be satisfied. Because his Chokhmah does not perceive a home as the Empire State Building. His Chokhmah perceives a home, and it relates it to the functional level. And it relates to the functional level in a oyneg level with delight, but only also with very precise requirements. The way his Chokhmah perceives, and this Chokhmah perceives it. This is the important thing, which is very difficult to really understand and recognize. The Chokhmah perceives it according to his oyneg. Why, if a person were permitted to design his home entirely according to his whim, according to his dream home. No two people would design their home exactly the same way. Even though there, as I said, no financial restrictions, no practical restrictions, it is because their oineg, their nefesh is different, and therefore the oineg ha-nefesh in this home, as the person in this home is different. That's why it comes out their chokhmah different. This is the point which we're making over here. Okay, I'm reading the second line from the bottom. And the point that we're making now is that the chokhmah and oineg is one and the same thing. Clearly, they're not on the same level as we're going to see, but they're speaking. Their message is identical. How do we see it? We see it in the fact that a person will misaneg bedover. Follow these words, please. So misaneg bedover b'tainog atzmi shebenafshoy, that he will be misaneg in something. He will delight in something. B'tainog atzmi, with an essential and a totally personal tainug. Shebenafshoy, that is in his soul, meaning to say that his oineg is not due to the functional resolution of his problems, not due to the comfort that it offers. This is a solely oineg. The soul is always comfortable. The oineg is because it represents and it complements, so to speak, his soul desire. Davko, when will that happen that you have this oineg? Only kasher hadover nase, when this thing was done, api gzeres chokhmos, according to the decree of his chokhmah. An interesting expression, gzeres chokhmos. Gzeira, the word gzeira, the literal translation of the word gzeira is a decree. Now, what does it mean, a decree of his wisdom? If his wisdom is based on practical requirements, he does some research. What will work? What will protect him against the rain? What will protect him against the floods? It's not a gzeros chokhmos. It's the result of his research. Gzeros chokhmos means that his chokhmah makes a statement. And I cannot even explain why I'm making a statement. I don't have any substantial reason, so to speak, that necessitate that it should be this way and not that way. This is the Gzeres Chokhmos. This is the way I want it. Of course, I can live in a different home.
Shouldn't it be Russian?
Now we hear you too much. Gzeres Chokhmos, it's a Gzeres. It's a decree, it's a statement. And he doesn't even try to explain himself. He doesn't have to explain himself. This is the way my Chokhmah sees it. And then, if it is Gzeres Chokhmos and Davko, only then will he actually experience a time of Atzmi Shebenafshe, the oineg of his nefesh. If it is made with all the practical requirements, all the comforts, but not according to Gzeres Chokhmos. Something comes to mind, which is not an identical case at all, but it's still, this came to mind, which demonstrates a certain element in human character. I once read an interesting episode. I believe this was with General MacArthur. I don't know if you guys are familiar, this is one of the giants of the Second World War. And Second World War, everyone knows this was the most brutal war in human history. And he was a general. And he laid out a certain plan, a strategy how they're going to approach a certain horizon, certain garrison. And he was presenting his plan to his generals, to his cabinet. And one of the generals asked permission to say something, and he made a point, and he said, if we go this way, this is a better way than to go this way. So MacArthur responded, you may be right. Isn't it a pity that I made a decision?
What?
Isn't it a pity that I already made a decision? That's meant leadership. And you all know that in order to lead troops in war, put millions of people's lives on the line, you have to have a very, very strong character. You have to have a profound sense of what you're doing. This is not something that's done on the basis of calculations.
Rabbi Paltiel?
Just 1 second.
Yeah, somebody's not on mute.
Oh,
Somebody
mute,
is not on
please. Mute. There's an interesting phenomenon in our government structure. We have our president, and we have the president as a cabinet of secretaries, upon secretaries, and sub-secretaries, assistant secretaries. Each secretary is a greater expert in his field than the president. There's no question about it. And yet, who makes the decisions? The secretaries only present their findings and their opinion, and the president makes a decision. On what basis? He's not an expert in this. How do you make a decision? The answer is that a decision, ultimate decision, is not based on the practical arguments. Ultimate decision is made on a certain spirit. What is the right thing for the country? And the spirit of the country, not every president represents that, but this is what a president is supposed to represent. This, I believe, is our own exposure to this principle that we're learning here. There's Gzeres Chochmos. We hardly have that experience in our lives of building a home. There are such things, but generally speaking, that build a home, the Gzeres Chochmos, it doesn't happen. You build a home according to the available space and according to the available resources. This is why in Chassidus, when it gives a morsel of this type, it generally speaking, almost without variance, it speaks about the melech. The melech is building a palace. Why a melech? Why not any individual? Shmuel Graber can also build a house in Mitzvah. Right? Why not? Because to perceive a house that represents a human being rather than circumstances, you have to have a melech. So now the question is this: Chochmah is wisdom. Where does Chochmah relate to the human being? So this is what the point is saying, that the Chochmah is one thing with the Oinek. And no matter how well you design this home, if it is not a Gzeres Chochmosoi, he will not have that essential Neshama desire, delight. And if it is, yes, built according to the Gzeres Chochmosei, then he will have that kind of. Isn't that amazing? This is Chochmah. Chochmah and Oynek. It's one entity. Two different levels and one entity. If it is according to Gzeres Chochmosei, he will have that experience. This is the big thing over here.
Can you take a question here?
Yeah, perfect time.
So, you know, we have the expression coming up, Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos Baruch El, Nachas Ruach Lefonai, Shegazarte V'Naser Etzaini, right?
Thank you.
So it sounds as though, again, I'm just going on this question of how does Chachma make Gezeres? In that expression, it sounds like, you know, where do you get a Gezerah? From the Ratzon of the Melech. Here we're saying that no, Gezerah comes from the Chachma, and it's the same as the Ayin.
All right, look, this is a broad question, but the short answer to your question is that Chassidus, whenever it refers to Gezerah, it goes, Api Gezeras Chochmosei Yisborach. That the
In other
world
words,
was
this is a
created.
common expression.
What? That's a common expression.
Chochmosei is a common expression.
Absolutely. Gezeras Chochmosei Yisborach. This is
Are
how
you
the
finished
world.
now with explaining how Chachma makes Gezeres?
Yeah. So Gzeres, I explained why this is a Gzera. It's a
I'm
Gzera
not
because
sure,
it
I'm not
represents
sure I
this.
get it yet.
Huh?
I'm not sure that I get it yet.
The reason it's called a Gzera, it's not a Gzera in the same sense that a Melech makes a Gzera. It's called a Gzera to define it as a statement of will rather than a statement of practical reasoning. Normally you say, how do you build a home? According to certain parameters that are necessary. Who built your home? An engineer.
A statement of will, but it's expressed in and through Chochmah.
That's right. It's expressed through Chochmah, and the Chochmah comes in the form of a Gzeira, even though it's Chochmah. And Chochmah, I can sing before. Chochmah, you would think, would substantiate its statement. No, we want it this way because. We want it this way because. And then there is Gzeres Chochmah that says, this is how we want it, and there's no because. That's what Gzeres Chochmah. And this is a Chochmah perception. And this Chochmah, where does Chochmah get that perception? From the Nefesh, from the Oynek Nefesh. Chochmah states that this is what I want. This is how it should be, because if there is Chochmah, so this is how I know it should be. Why? How do I know? From where do I know it? From how do I know? Where do I know? From because I know what the Nefesh is. The Oynek Nefesh. It's reflected in my Chochmah. And if it is, this is the big thing over here. Should we read the second line from the bottom again? Shemisamek bedover, betainog asmi shebenafshoy. That a person is misamek in something, betainog atzmi, with an essential and a personal tainog, shebenafshoy, that is in his soul. Meaning to say, not an oineg that can be explained in some kind of a functional, practical benefit, but shebenafshoy, which is my nefesh. Dafko, and that will be only kasher hadover nasa api gzeres chochmos, only if it's done api gzeres api by the decree, by the statement. Some is for the statement of his chochmah, not the arguments of his chochmah, not the representation of chochmah, but the statement of chochmah. Because the statement of chochmah, that represents the oinek.
It still sounds like it's closer to Rustin than it is to Chachma, because Chachma would be the same by everybody, L'chayra. Rustin is different by everybody. No?
No. Chochma by everyone is reflecting the oineg that is in his nefesh. That's what we're saying here now. The Chochma and oineg This is one thing. The Indian that you're saying Rotzen, there is also truth in this. Since you mentioned it, and I don't want people to feel like we don't have a clarity, just want to make a very simple statement about Rotzen. Please try to understand it, and we should go on. Chochmah represents Oynek. How does Oynek result in Chochmah? So we said the other day, where is the correlationship? That Seichel is based on Rotzen. So we asked the question, between Seichel is based on Rotzen. Seichel is based on logical proof, not on Rotzen.
On Oynek. Seichel is based on Oynek, you're trying to say. Right? You're saying Seichel is based on Rotzen, but you're trying to say Seichel is based on Oynek.
So follow. You're saying Chochmah is one thing with Oynek. But then there is also the regular statement in Chassidus that Seichel is based on Rotzen. So where is the meaning? What is the meaning that Seichel is based on Rotzen? Seichel is not based on Rotzen. Seichel is based on Oynek, like we said, or Seichel is based on Seichel. What is Rotzen? How is Rotzen? What is the contribution of Rotzen into Seichel? There's one important element in Seichel. It seems almost so to speak, a simple truism, but we don't realize to what extent that is significant. Even something that makes perfect good sense you will not understand it because it makes sense. You will understand because you want to understand. The koyach ha-chochmah, koyach ha-seichel is dependent on the rotzen. You can talk yourself blue, explaining something that is most obvious, and you don't understand how. You can't understand. I don't get it. Okay, let me try again. I don't get it. In order to get anything in Seichel, there has to be the rotzen that you want to know. What is the basis of the rotzen? So we said the other day, and this is important, in general important to understand, that the primary human element, I'm going off a little bit in a tangent, but what can you do? That's the nature of our shir. The primary difference between a human being and an animal, the animal is alive and the human being is alive. The animal fights for his life, so to speak, and goes out to eat because it's hungry. And the human being also does the same thing. So the difference is, like we've mentioned many times lately, the principle that says, "Roitzi b'ki yumoy." The human being wants to live. He wants to be. Why does he want to be? This want is not based on reason. This want is because his being represents his connection to the godly truth. He has a rotzen in being. This rotzen supersedes everything. Because he wants to be, that's why the chochm, the seichel, operates. An animal doesn't want to be hurt. It runs away from fire. but it doesn't have a positive will to it. It doesn't have any kind of that, a positive pursuit. A human being, the primary human being is the positivity that he brings into the world. The essential godly truth. This is the meaning that Seichel is based on Rotz. Like the Rambam says, he mentioned all the time. The Rambam says, Seichel, the beginning of Seichel, before anything, before Chochmah, before anything, in order for Seichel to function, you have to know that there is a first being that brings everything forth. And Amit is everything that exists comes from the truth of his existence. If you know that there is truth, then you can begin to function with your Seichel. Seichel will not lead you to the truth. You have to know that beforehand. And that is what's expressed in the Rotz. Because there is truth, this is why the Nefesh, he wants to be, and this is where Seichel comes to a functional level. So that's the answer to Rotzen and Seichel and so forth. But what Seichel, what Chochmah perceives in terms of what Seichel says, Seichel doesn't say what the Rotzen wants, Seichel says what the Oynek wants. And reflecting the Oynek, it is reflecting the Oynek exactly the way the Oynek is, even though this is a Chochmah and this is Oynek. In the Oynek there is not a designed home. In the Oynek there is whatever the Oynek is. But when it comes down to bring the Oynek down into the worldly level, such as in the design of a home, Chochmah comes in and it tells you that this is the type of home that this Oynek will be able to relate to. And if you give him an Empire State Building, and he can spread himself out, one shoe in one room, another shoe in another room, it's not going to give him anything. This is the pshat. Chochmah knows what it knows because it has the Oyer HaOynek in it. And this is why the Lashon Api Gzeros Chochmosei. I explained why Gzeros Chochmosei, because it is a statement of wisdom, not a derivative, a discovery of wisdom.
Discovery, you mean based on outside research, so to say. It's based
any kind of practical research.
It's based on its relation to the Etzem.
What?
It's based on its relation to the Etzem.
Not discovery, but basically, yeah, that's right. That's what Chochmah is reflecting. The Etzem HaOynek. And this is in conformity to what is described elsewhere, a greater length. Harei, and thus, from this illustration, okay, sorry, this illustration is in 2 lines, but this is the whole illustration. Be'emes, we see, be'emes, in truth, Tainug v'chochma, hein dover echot. Tainug and chochma are one and the same thing. And chochma represents the Tainug at the Chochmah level. And this is where we're going to start pointing out what the difference is in terms of the levels and so forth. But in essence, Tainug and Chochmah, that's why you said Chochmah is a statement, because Oynek also makes a statement. Doesn't make a statement. Oynek is just the reality itself. Oynek does not explain itself, like we've said many times. Oynek does not come through a process. It's the reality of the Nefesh. Chochmah has that power of Gzeros Chochmos. But by Chochmah it's called Gzeros. Because it's a derivative from Yisod.
Tanya v'Chochmah davar echad. Echad meaning here they're working together. We just identified how they're different.
We didn't explain how they're different. They're in different levels,
Yeah.
but it's the same thing.
Okay.
In Dover Echad Mamish. When the sun shines to the window,
Yeah. The sunlight in the room is the same as.
you call it window light or sunlight, but it comes to the window. Right?
Some person builds and furnishes his home. That home, if it was done completely according to the Einig, that is a reflection of the Einig. That is
That
on
is
a lower level. That is
the Einig and lower level.
It seems like the light, like the kalim are different, but the thing in the keli is the same.
Well, that itself is quite a feat, to take an infinite light and put it in a keli. Gentlemen, this is it for this evening.
David Melch was only pointing at the Chochmah.
Good enough.
Good enough. We'll do it tomorrow. All right. A gute Nacht, a good Yor. We will meet again tomorrow morning. Hopefully.